Okay, so good morning. So last time we were here, Andy had the Dharma talk, and he talked about God. And I think the main thing he asked us to do was to notice what came up for us when he talked about it. What kind of emotional reactions we had to the word. And so when I heard it, what I noticed was it connected me to the notion of God the judge. The guy sitting by the pearly gates who's going to decide who's in and who's out. And I think a fair criticism would be that's not really who the Christian God is. And I would tend to agree with that, but I'm just saying that's the first thing that came up for me. So I think most religions, maybe all religions, have some form of cosmic justice. So in the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition, it's like God. In the Eastern traditions, like Hinduism and Buddhism, it's karma. It's more an impersonal force. I think a really great topic for a Dharma talk would be to talk about what is cosmic justice, and why it is we think we need it. But that's not what I'm going to talk about. Okay, what I'm going to talk about is a koan. It's a koan that deals with karma, and it's one that I had like a visceral reaction to. So it's number 97 from the Blue Cliff record. It's called Scornful Revilement. And just the name kind of gets you. So let me read this gem. The Diamond Scripture says, if one is scorned and reviled by others, the individual has done wrong in previous ages and should fall into states of misery. Because of the scorn and revilement of people in the present age, the wrongs of previous ages dissolve. Kind of makes you feel warm and fuzzy all over. So if your head's spinning, let me read it one more time. The Diamond Scripture says, if one is scorned and reviled by others, the individual has done wrong in previous ages and should fall into states of misery. Because of the scorn and revilement of people in the present age, the wrongs of previous ages dissolve. So, like I say, I had a pretty visceral reaction to this one, unlike I've ever had to any other koan. And I want to talk to you about that, but before I do, I want you to have your own relationship to the koan, like kind of unclouded by my experience. So what I'm going to do is ring the gong, and I'm going to read the koan 4 times, and after each reading, I'm going to prompt you with just a simple request. And then I'll ring the gong again and talk about my reaction. Okay, the Diamond Scripture says, if one is scorned and reviled by others, the individual has done wrong in previous ages and should fall into states of misery. Because of the scorn and revilement of people in the present age, the wrongs of previous ages dissolve. So what word or phrase stands out for you? What calls to you in this koan? The Diamond Scripture says, if one is scorned and reviled by others, the individual has done wrong in previous ages and should fall into states of misery. Because of the scorn and revilement of people in the present age, the wrongs of previous ages dissolve. So ponder that word or phrase, sink into it, rest in it. What's it saying to you? The Diamond Scripture says, if one is scorned and reviled by others, the individual has done wrong in previous ages and should fall into states of misery. Because of the scorn and revilement of people in the present age, the wrongs of previous ages dissolve. So move from your head to your heart. How do you feel about this word or phrase? The Diamond Scripture says, if one is scorned and reviled by others, the individual has done wrong in previous ages and should fall into states of misery. Because of the scorn and revilement of people in the present age, the wrongs of previous ages dissolve. So just rest in the silence and listen for the little voice within. What's it saying to you? What difference will this make in your life? Okay, so I'll say a few words about the reaction that I had to it. I guess when I first heard it, when I first heard the koan, the visceral reaction I had was that I identified with the person being scorned. And what I felt was shame. And as I began to recognize the shame, I also felt a lot of anger. So let me talk a little bit about shame, because some people like to use the word shame and guilt interchangeably, but I think there's a subtle difference. So when I think of guilt, I think of like a mistake that I've made. It's like a problem with my behavior. It's something that can be corrected. So it's like, I've made a mistake. I'm sorry. Can you forgive me? Shame has a little different bent to it. It's like, I am a mistake. I'm fundamentally flawed, and there's not a damn thing I can do about that. So to me, shame is like the worst feeling on the planet. And unless you're a sociopath, you've probably felt shame in your life. I mean, it's part of, the human experience. So I also connect this to a specific event. And let me describe the event. One day I arrived at the prison, and I noticed as I was walking in that the medical examiner was there from the county. Never a good sign. Yeah. So when I got into the chapel, I asked, what's going on? And what they said was, there was an inmate who was a sex offender, and he'd been outed. And when he was outed, he felt so much shame, felt so much scorn from other inmates that he killed himself. And as his body was being removed, the inmates lined up and started chanting Chomo, Chomo, meaning child molester. So this guy was getting it not only when he was alive, but even in death he was getting, scorn and revilement. And he was getting it from a group of men who are already outcasts themselves. So he's like an outcast within a group of outcasts. So all this is going on, I was sitting in the chapel with two inmates who themselves were sex offenders, not necessarily child molesters, but were in on some sort of sex charge. And one of them turned to me said, "Look, this is what I have to look forward to in life, even after prison. I'm going to have to register with the state everywhere I go. And each time I do, and I get to see the disgust in people's eyes all over again. And I'm going to be wearing the scarlet letter the rest of my life." So from there, I can kind of feel the anger, like anger that anyone would have to feel that way the rest of their life. So that was my initial reaction to the koan. But actually, I think there's a lesson to be learned here. Shame is unpleasant in the extreme. But the reason I know how shame feels is because I'm not a sociopath. At least I don't think I am. So feeling shame on occasion is part of the human experience, and the question becomes, how do we work with it? And I think that's what's going on with this koan. It's like, how do you work with this awful feeling of being rejected? So one approach would be to deaden my feelings by indulging in addiction. I could drink or take drugs or zone out in front of the TV. And this can be effective in terms of not feeling the shame, but unfortunately you can't deaden feelings selectively. When you deaden them across the board. So if I'm not feeling shame, then I also don't feel bliss or joy or any of the good things in life. And another possibility is I could project the shame onto somebody else. And so it wasn't lost on me that some of the inmates who lined up and were chanting Chomo at this guy themselves were sex offenders. And this was a way of like unburdening that and sticking it on somebody else. But there's another possibility, and that is to just work with it. When I feel it, to just meditate on it, be present to it, and be mindful of my feelings. And as the koan itself says, just stay with it until it dissolves. And if I can do that, I'm ready for anything. So that's the experience I had with this koan. Your experience may have been completely different. So, whoa, I lost
Losing your marbles.
Losing my marbles. I didn't have any in the first place. So I'll stop here and you guys tell me what kind of experience you had with it.